I'm here in the woods today in Devon, and I'm going to show you what to look for a badger sett. Badgers are a very attractive animal, I think, with their lovely black and white stripy faces. They have been persecuted in the past, so they have been fully protected by law now, so you're not allowed to disturb badgers or kill or injure them or cruelly ill-treat them. So it's really important that when you do a survey you make as little noise as possible. It's not considered to be disturbing to actually walk around a sett and stand on the sett, but obviously you don't want to start doing any digging, poking around, sticking sticks down there or anything like that. So yeah, have fun and see if you can find a badger sett. And when you do find a sett, then the thing we usually do is trying to work out if it's a main sett, an annex sett, a subsidiary sett or an outlier sett. And a main sett tends to have lots of holes and several of them are active, so the number of holes that are active is not related to the number of badgers that are present. The number of badgers tends to be defined by the environment rather than the look of the sett. So there are some really ancient setts that were mapped in the Domesday Book and are actually still here 1,000 years later, and those setts are huge. They've literally been there for 10 centuries, and so a lot of digging over that time will have happened, and you might see 40 or 50 holes, something like that. The more recent badger setts will have many fewer holes than that, and you might only get 1 or 2 holes. So the main setts are occupied throughout the year and usually used by the alpha male and alpha female for breeding, and so it's the most active sett, usually the largest sett within their territory as well. Badgers are very territorial, so they'll tend to mark their territory by using latrines or dung pits, and they are very territorial, so they want to keep the other badgers out. So another thing to look for is latrines to try and work out where the actual territory is. So normally when I'm mapping a badger sett, I will say where the sett is on a map, and then I'll mark on it how many holes there are and how many holes are active, and then I'll do the same across the area, following the paths that I found in the woods, and then take it from there and see if we can work out which is the main sett and which is the annex sett. So an annex sett is typically within about 150 meters of the main sett. It'll be a smaller sett, less activity, less spoil outside, and so yeah, it's usually connected by paths from the main sett as well. And then a subsidiary sett is usually connected by paths but much further away, somewhere else within the territory. Can be a place that they go and hang out if there's good food source at certain times of the year. For example, if there's a maize field nearby, they might decide to go and live there for a couple of weeks and eat maize. And then outliers are usually just single whole setts that have very little spoil, if any spoil at all, and if you investigate them, they're usually only about 1 meter long, and they're just a tunnel really without any bedding chambers or anything like that. So the first thing to do is to go to a woodland. Really, the most likely place that you're going to find a badger sett is in a woodland, and then you just go and see if there's any well-worn paths like the one behind me here, and then you just follow the paths, and if the path is getting more well-worn, then you're getting closer to the sett. If they're getting less well-worn, then you're going the wrong way, so turn round and start going towards the more well-worn paths. So let's go and see if we can find a badger sett, shall we? So the first clue that you've got badgers in a woodland is there's well-worn paths, but you've got to decide whether they're well-worn by people or dogs. So let's follow a couple and see what happens. So if it's a well-worn path and it's kind of going underneath something like this, you see that? So that's an animal that's a low down animal, like a badger. And you can see the See the path carries on over there. So that looks a bit human unfriendly, so I'm going to go this way. And catch the path a bit further up. So you can see here the path comes through some vegetation, quite low vegetation, so I'm thinking not very good for humans really. And another indicator there's badgers is digging. They like to dig. Obviously other things dig, like rabbits as well. And going further along into the woods, so what you usually find is that the path becomes more well worn the closer it gets to a set. So you can see here it's going under a branch. Carries on through under a fallen tree as well later. And there's another path just here. Still following the path. So we've got a fallen cherry tree, and the path is running across the back over there. Oh, there we go. I think I can see a badger set. I can see some freshly dug soil, so let's just head over there. It's quite a bit of a clearing here actually. See if there's any signs of badgers here. We've got a few diggings. These could be snuffle holes where they stick their noses in to find beetles and worms. Bits of digging and stuff. Sometimes you see scratch marks on the tree. There's some low down ones, but sometimes you get them higher up on the trunk as well. Can't see any on this one. So there's some more fresh digging here. Again, it could be something else. I mean, for example, here's a nut that's been chewed by a squirrel, and it could be a squirrel's just been digging up his nuts from last autumn. So here we've come across a whole pile of spoil, and this is quite fresh. Some of it's freshly dug, some of it not quite so freshly dug. So you can see this huge pile just here. It's half burying that tree, and I would say that this is a huge amount of soil. If you imagined it as builders' dumpy bags, I'd say that's probably about 10 or 12 or more, maybe 20. So it's a large amount of spoil, which means that there's a large amount of excavation inside and underneath this badger set. We've got some fresh digging, not particularly fresh. I've seen it fresher. Sometimes on the diggings you'll see little hairs, badger hairs, which are distinctive. I can't see one at the moment, but they're long and white with a black band near the end, but the end is actually white. So there seems to be another hole over there with a big spoil heap outside of it. And then just behind us is a badger hole, and you can see it's quite large. So typically a D shape with the flat part of the D at the bottom and then curved at the top, usually oval-ish or D-shaped. And I do a thing called the fist test, which is basically if you do that and put it inside the burrow, it'll be nowhere near the sides if it's a badger hole, but if it's a rabbit hole you'll be touching the sides. It's not considered to be disturbing of badgers to walk on the set like this and just have a look if you're just doing it quietly. It would be a different thing if you were removing vegetation or digging or doing something that could disturb the badgers out of their set. But you can see that they've actually dug up some quite sizable stones here. They have very powerful claws and feet, and you can see the spoil has spilled out down into the field as well, and this tree is half buried in spoil. I'm based down here in Devon, and the soil is quite red, so it's very obvious usually when there's a badger sett. So here's the hole, and if I go down there and show you in a minute, I'll show you how big the hole is so you can get an idea of the size. You can see a possible scratching post over there. I wonder if there's any latrines around. So latrines are places where they do their droppings. So they do them in little dung pits, and they just defecate over and over again in the same little dung pit. So you often see droppings that have got pips in them, and then some older droppings underneath that have got corn in them or something like that. So let's have a closer look at this hole. You can see my hand and the size of the hole. It's huge. So if I did the fist test with my hand like that, and I'm not even near the entrance yet, if I put it in there, it's going to no way touch the sides. So it's quite a big hole. And they often, when they're digging out, they often back up and drag the soil with their back legs. So you get this spoil heap with a little sort of valley. So you can see that valley if you imagine the badger is excavating inside, but he's reversing out and pulling the spoil out with his back legs. You can see a little run down there going through down into the field, and there's a few scratch marks here on the wood on this fallen log. So that's what a badger sett looks like. Very well worn, aren't they? So you have to remember that badgers are creatures of habit, and they also have short legs, and so they wear these well-worn paths. And I'm actually convinced that a lot of our old lanes were originally badger paths through the forest. Their main diet is actually earthworms, so you often find diggings like this. Just found a badger latrine just here. I'm just going to get a stick and see if I can take a sample, see what's in it. What's it been eating? Looks like grains and stuff like that. And I'm also going to be very brave and smell it, just to double check. Can't really smell anything. Let me just try and get a bit more on the stick. Yeah, it's not an unpleasant smell. It's sort of musty and musky. It's not really horrible. If that was dog poo, you definitely wouldn't want to be sniffing it like that. We're on a path here, and you can see a little track going off into the woods, and it's a good idea to have a look on the barbed wire, because if the badger is pushing its way through there, there could be some badger hairs on here. I can't see any on that one, and it goes off into the woods. This is typical badger as well, so just a well-worn path over a bank. leading into a woodland. So they tend to favour woodlands for their setts, and you can see the path going off into the distance there. So again, so creatures of habit actually wearing well-worn paths. Here's another well-worn path up over a hedge bank, and if you want to go and have a look, let's go and have a quick look. But it's quite steep. And you can see it goes up and over the bank, and we actually call this an up and over. And going off into the field. They do like to forage in fields actually, because their main diet is earthworms. And you'll probably find a well-worn path around the edge of the field. So this is good badger habitat because there's a woodland and then pasture next to it, so they can put their set in the woodland and then forage for earthworms in the farmland, in the pasture.